The last 18 months have thrown many significant challenges our way, from bushfires to drought, a mouse plague, floods in the last week, not to mention the coronavirus pandemic. It's affected us all, especially the loneliness and social isolation, but there is a silver lining. During these crises, we have witnessed over and over the importance of neighbours and communities and the vital role they play supporting those who need it most. Sunday, March 28th is Neighbour Day. It's Australia's annual celebration of community and encourages people to connect with those who live in their neighbourhood, in person or online. To chat with us about why we should celebrate our neighbours, we're joined by the host of ABC TV's Gardening Australia, Logie Award winner, landscape architect and environmental educator, Costa Georgiadis. Well, g'day Costa. Look, you are out and about all over the country visiting neighbourhoods and communities. What's caught your attention in the last 12 to 18 months in these communities?
Well, look, I suppose the thing that's caught my attention most of all has been just how communities have come together over the challenges, and whether that was the floods, whether it was the fires, whether it was COVID. It kind of forced people's hands to look at how important those around us are, because when things get really tough, it's those around us that are the closest to help us. And you know, when you look at how valuable our neighbours are, it never shines to the fore more than right now when we're in these troubling times, like here in Sydney at the moment. You know, these floodwaters are just bubbling up and causing, you know, great community disruption. And it's those next door that are the ones that are going to look out for you and help you through. Yeah,
and that really highlights how important it is to get to know your neighbours, isn't it? And knowing how they can help make a difference in these crisis times.
Yeah, well, that's right. And you know, being involved with Neighbour Day, as I have been for, I think it's probably the better part of the last decade, you realise that Neighbour Day is like any day, whether it's National Frog Day or National Gardening Day or whatever the national day may be. The day is just an awareness marker. It's just a line in the sand that says, hey, this exists. But really, you know, and this year the theme with it is Neighbour Day is every day. And when you look at how all of these challenges have been back to back, whether it was, you know, the fires, then the floods, then COVID, now more floods, you know, now there's plagues, you know, there's all these different things that are happening. So it's not a case of say, all right, well, I'm going to be neighbourly just on the last Sunday in March. That's really just the chance to go, hey, are we being neighbourly enough every day? And that's what's special about it.
Yeah, when you might have the occasional gripe with your neighbour perhaps, but when you're having to sandbag your own homes and you're trying to help each other at the moment, like you mentioned in New South Wales, why is it that, you know, these crises do bring out these increased responses from those that are around us?
Well, I suppose it makes us realise that, you know, life is fragile. You know, we live day to day at a breakneck pace, but then when something gets disturbed and the balance goes out of whack, you realise that when you want to reach out, you got to find those closest. And, you know, we may take them for granted sometimes in this busy kind of world that we run around in. But when you need someone to check on the fam or check on the water level at your house because you're out helping someone else, or to check, you know, you think of how many fireys were out fighting fires while their houses went, or their neighbours were helping their houses. You realise that it's those most close in our lives that we can often take for granted. But you know, recognising that and making sure that we build those bonds, because when the challenges come, they're the people that are sort of locked around our arms, and anything to recognise that and build that and just say, hey, our neighbours are there every day, even though we mightn't see them, you know, and a little phone call, a knock on the door, a call up for a cuppa, or make a little bit of extra dinner and just take a portion down to the senior who's living on her own down the street. You know, the little, I suppose the thing I learn every day about community, and I was out in Alice Springs yesterday in a little community 100 k's west, and, you know, it's those day-to-day simple things that are actually the gold nuggets in life. You know, when people turn up, they show up, they share, and they've got your back.
Yep.
That's probably the most important thing.
Yeah, we certainly found that. We live in the Barossa Valley, and there was a fire very close to our house. And, you know, when your neighbours are also threatened by the same fire, you certainly realise that, the value in keeping those open lines of communication is really highlighted. And when you look at what's happened in the last 12 to 18 months, and we've had people who've been locked down or they've been working from home, and they've seen a lot more of their neighbours than they might have seen in the past, particularly if both, you know, the household members, adults, are working full time and they're not home much. You know, have you got some stories you've picked up across the journey about those sorts of stories of people who have discovered something about their neighbours now they've seen a lot more of them? Yeah,
and it's kind of, as you say, those little activities that people engaged in. They were walking around the block more because they didn't have...
Couldn't go much further in Victoria.
Yeah, that's right. You're only allowed 5 kilometres, if that. Or they had more time to tend their garden. And that was probably one of the things. We did a survey through an organisation called Sustain, which is the Australian Food Network. And like 10,000 respondents replied with more than 25,000 answers. And I looked at the report because I'm involved with it. And I'm not talking about an answer of yes, no, yes, no. People talked about how valuable being in the garden was for them, or starting a garden. And that's probably one of the big kickers. And you saw right at the beginning how within a few days, all the seedlings were sold out. All the seeds then went. And then once the seeds went, then all the chickens went.
Yeah.
Nobody, you couldn't buy a little pullet to have chickens if you begged, or offered gold for them within 2 weeks of COVID lockdown beginning. And that's been some of those stories. I was brought to tears reading some of the answers because people shared from their heart what it meant to start these gardens and to actually then have their neighbours come and get involved as well. So that's probably one of the most heartwarming elements that I've experienced over the last 18 months, just how much a little bit of growing has made a difference. Yeah.
Do you think that being a good neighbour is different? Say, we've got a largely regional audience. I think country people would pride themselves on being neighbourly. Do you think it's got a different dynamic or importance whether you live in the city or the country?
Yeah, look, I think in the city, people live on top of each other and they don't even know each other.
Yeah.
In the country, people know, and they actually, they make that effort. They physically make that effort because they know that, the Jones family have lived on that property near them for the last 2 generations in some cases. So I think there's similarities, but at the same time, because of the distance in our rural areas, it's important to remember that, time can get away and you suddenly realise, oh, gee, I haven't seen them for a while.
Yeah.
Probably the thing about Neighbour Day is just a reminder to not let things slip and not let the pace of life just vacuum away the days and then the weeks. And then you go, gee, I haven't seen Thelma and John for 3 months.
Yeah.
I'm battling and struggling myself with everything that's going on, but loneliness is only as lonely as you make it.
Yeah.
We've got to make that effort, and that effort can be really just the small things.
Yeah, and us reaching out sees other people reaching out back to us, and that starts to bridge that loneliness gap, doesn't it?
Yeah, because, I think one of the things that we're going to feel in the months and years ahead is the impact of the loneliness created by COVID.
Yeah.
And Neighbour Day is sort of this way to say, okay, let's actually break this down into small steps, not a marathon. It doesn't need these massive efforts of, I've got to come round and get everyone together every week. No, just small actions are that kind of loneliness buster.
Yes, yeah, that's a good term, loneliness buster. If people have got want some tips, or they want to find out more about Neighbour Day and how to bust the loneliness, where should they go?
neighbourday.org.au, and there's lots of things that people can do. And I mean, Sunday's a day where we can just go, okay, let's wave the flag. But I think what it's really about is have a look on that website. You can get a pack, and you can put a little sign up. You can organise an event. They give you some details on how you can organise a little event. I'm not saying a massive thing, just the little steps, because sometimes I think the other thing about this period is people have gone into their shells. And because they've gone into their shells, socialising has become a little more difficult.
Yeah.
It's almost easier once you start to become lonely, just to go, oh, it's a bit hard. It's a bit hard.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't be bothered. And that's the tipping point where you start to fall into the depths of loneliness. So there's great resources on there. People can have a look at what other people are doing, other suggestions, and whether that's a phone call, whether it's an email, whether it's baking something and dropping it off, whether it's just tapping on the door and saying, hey, what's happening?
Yeah.
Why are you here? No reason, just to be in your face,
Yeah.
I'm just come over to say g'day and see what you're up to, and talk what at the bar.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Costa, for sharing that with us today, that important message. neighbourday.org.au. Get around it, everyone, and we'll catch you again another time, Costa.
Fantastic. Thanks for the chance to chat to all your listeners. It's been a pleasure.